Hello, everyone. Welcome back for episode 39 of the Ready, Set, Shag podcast. I'm your host, the Shagsworth, or I don't know. I keep saying that, but just call me Tom, being formal. We are back for another episode. On this show, we like to talk to people who we enjoy learning more about, people who I admire, people who I like to call friends. Starting to branch out and talk to just people like that just aren't maybe in the spotlight all the time, but who are trying to make a name for themselves on YouTube, just starting out, just like myself, even friends. I'm even thinking about getting some family on here and asking some harder, tougher questions. But today, my guest obviously is no exception to the rule. We like him. You guys might know him. Brahmabull is here with us. How are we doing?
Hey, pretty good. A little bit nervous after that minute-long countdown. Usually not nervous for a stream, but you give me 58 seconds to think about it, and uh-oh.
Yep. Yeah, well, it's funny. I was thinking how much I don't really like the countdown anymore, but I'm in the right in the middle of making a brand new intro for the show. So something that actually goes with the show that could, when you listen to it afterwards, if you have to listen to it on Spotify or something, it'd be like an intro to the show. And it will feature each guest. It'll be specific to each guest.
Yeah.
So
cool.
But, and then it won't feel so like, oh my God, like there's this, anticipation build up, to this grand show.
Yep.
But how have you been, man? I mean, we talk quite a bit, but what's new?
Been pretty good. Yeah, just rolling along, doing the same things I've been doing for little over 2 years now. Doing a lot of shows almost every night now. Occasionally take a night off so that the wife doesn't really try to kill me. But yeah, getting to talk to a lot of people, making good friends over here. And, we were just in Vegas a couple weeks ago. Me and you got to meet in person. It was really cool to meet you in person. And everybody that we met out there, it's always nice to get out to those meetups and meet a few people, put faces to names and all that kind of stuff. So yeah,
for sure. What, well, for those who don't know you, I mean, people who watch tonight will probably know who you are, but those who don't, maybe give them a little insight into what you do online, like what you've been trying to build on your own YouTube channel and what you've been up to for the past couple of years. You said you've been at it for a couple of years. Tell the audience what that's been like.
Yeah, I kind of had a lucky, weird start to YouTube. I had originally gotten into YouTube I didn't really care for YouTube prior to about 2020. And I was actually looking for all the footage of the riots going on in 2020. And somehow that got me linked up and recommended with D-Day Cobra. So started watching Jeremy, and then that gets you to FNT pretty quickly. And then kind of branched out from there. But I mean, what I kind of did, I started with some political videos just to, get something out there and on a channel, because a lot of creators don't trust somebody to just come on out of the blue without having some history there. Right. So my first video was actually on the day that the Ukraine invasion happened. I had done a video about, what was pushing Putin to do that. And then 2 hours later, he invaded. So got a few videos out there. Then I think it was Grant Gregory actually recommended me to check out a few different shows. And I did a few different other shows, including Supreme Heretic. from there, I was a member on Comics Division's channel, so I decided to go on to a member, a members only stream. And then a few weeks later, I was invited on to comics for the Monday night show. And then after the show, they basically said, "Hey, do you want to be permanent?" And I was like, "Hell yeah!" Channel
Sweet.
with like 40 viewers or 40 subs, getting on Comics Division, one of the FNT members. It was a pretty good break, and that's led me to be able to meet a ton of different people because I may not have much pull over here on YouTube, but Comics Division name does, and so does Culture Casino and a few of the other guys in the Dix Division. So
Mhm.
that's been really a blessing for me to be able to branch out that way. And then, of course, the other group that I have hung out with kind of from the beginning, also because of Grant, is Mad over at Mad Barber Entertainment, and everybody that he's kind of hooked me up with, including little Chad that's out there tonight.
Yeah. It's funny how working through the circles of YouTube works because like I feel like it can happen really quick. Um, I don't know. I think you just got to take a chance on yourself and your opinions, like hopping on members only streams. And if you have something to say and you want to like talk about it, that's what you do. You just kind of hop into a channel of a crew that you already know and respect, and then see where it goes. I've certainly lucked out in a lot of ways with just reaching out to people, connecting with the right people, and I don't know if it's my charming personality or what, but it seems to get me callbacks every now and then. Um, so I've tried to kind of tug on that thread when I can. So, and it brought me, I mean, kind of similar things brought me to meeting you and those guys. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the same sort of political talking, like where 2019, 2020 was a very tumultuous time. I was in my own sort of transitionary period politically, and that got me learning about new people online, people who I knew from the past, then you know brings me all the way up here. And now I'm traveling to Vegas once a year to see
Right.
people, and going to I've been to Orlando to meet people, and even just like going to my own Salt Lake City one. I met Jay, Drunk 3PO out there, and Gina Carano. Like that was a really cool thing, to get to talk to her, and
Yeah.
so
Haven't gotten to meet Gina yet. I've met Jay a few times, but it's never been one of them that Gina was there. So looking
yeah.
forward to that. I think. Well, I'm hoping that they come to the Denver one in July.
Mhm.
I know that the Ripaverse is going to be there and a few other people, but
Yep.
it'd be awesome to meet Gina out there. I haven't heard anything on her.
Yeah, it's I mean, she's the nicest person I've like come across, just very, very sweet, very gentle. For someone who used to whoop ass all the time,
Yeah.
very gentle person. Um, it was cool. And Jay is just a gentle giant himself, just big dude, but like he's really nice, the happiest guy, biggest smile you've ever seen.
Yep.
But um, you know, I want to have you on because you on the show because you have we've talked a little bit about religion. We've talked about Christianity and all that stuff. We were on the panel. I was on the panel with you guys last week on Keri Smith's show,
Mm-hmm.
and I just wanted to get like maybe your more one-on-one experience with. Have you always been someone who's been like? Have you always been part of the church, or is it something that came to you later on?
Yeah, I grew up in the church. The family had a lot of roots when we lived in Texas in Fort Worth.
Mhm.
Uh, Basically, my parents and all their friend group had all gone to this church. The pastor was somebody that they all knew as he started the church, so they were kind of like founding members, kind of that church and that area, and grew up there. I mean, we did the Sunday morning service. Everybody had lunch together. Then we had the Sunday evening service. So basically, spent all day Sunday there.
Mhm.
Um, I had one like 2 month period where I was actually in public school. The rest of the time, I was in private Christian school.
Oh.
So really grew up in it, and yeah, kind of had a different experience than most because um, I think most of the people that grow up in the Christian school, especially, have a tendency to sharply rebel as soon as they get out of the school. So it's not something that I necessarily recommend for everybody, because depending on the type of person you are and the type of upbringing you have separate from the Christianity portion of it, it's a complete shell shock to never have any exposure to the outside world. My parents were perfectly fine with me getting a job at 15 and 16. So getting exposure to the restaurant world will expose you real quick to a lot of stuff out there. And I mean, I was never really a prude, kind of naive type Christian person. I mean, you know me. I mean,
right.
I have very defined limits, and I know what I believe is moral and correct. But I also
call you conservative.
Yeah, that would be part of where the conservative came from.
Yeah.
I mean, I also grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh and Paul Harvey. I mean, my dad didn't make us. I chose to listen to Rush Limbaugh from like 7th grade on.
Really?
Yeah. I listened to AM radio almost all of middle school and high school. I mean, so it was kind of weird. I mean, in high school, it was real easy because I was a yearbook editor. So I had my own office. So I would just, during the hours that Rush was on, I would be in my office doing stuff. And most teachers would let me out of most classes because I was basically getting A's and everything. So I had a block set up where I actually became the teacher's aide, and we got to, request who to become the teacher's aide to. Became the teacher's aide for the janitor.
Nice.
That way, he didn't want me doing anything. He's like, no, you'll just screw everything up. Just, go to lunch early or whatever. And it was like that led into the lunch hour, led into study hall. Yeah. So I had like a 3-day window or a 3-hour window most days where I could listen to it and do whatever I wanted. So got a lot of conservative talking points back then from Rush, and listened to him all the way up until he died.
Did your experience with the church as a young person, did you ever rebel against that, or was it something that you always was it something you always took in as this is what I want, I feel good about this? Was it something you were I guess bear with me how I phrase it.
Sure.
Were you fed it too much from your parents, or did you, or again, did you just kind of accept what it was and then build your values around that throughout your life?
I've always had the belief, and I strongly believe the Christian faith and the Christian teachings. As far as rebellion, I've got a bit of a mouth on me, so I mean, most people would not call it very Christ-like at times. I've got my vices. I'm a smoker. I drink, but I don't think that those things disqualify you from the church. As far as an actual rebellion, though, maybe for 5 minutes. I think I said Jesus Christ once as a blasphemy, and then felt horrible about it within 5 minutes, and was like, nope, never doing it again.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, I've got quite the repertoire of cuss words, but I will never do the blasphemy thing.
That's interesting. Yeah, I mean, it's funny because come to think of it, I don't think I heard you say that at all. I probably said it a lot, to which I apologize. Yeah, I don't see. That's one of the, I guess, as silly as it sounds, it's one of the reasons I always think, who gives a shit? Yeah. That's why. I mean, I guess there's varying degrees of how people follow, the good book, in worship or whatever. But that was one of those things. I thought, I don't know.
Maybe, and on swearing, I mean, at this point, it's basically most people can't get through a sentence without using, some swear word in it. I mean, in every regular everyday talk, right?
It's true.
And it's just kind of how these last couple generations have grown up. I mean, it's completely different from our parents' generation where, I mean, if you said anything like that, you were probably being crude or doing it in private or in a, certain group of friends, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I mean, you can't even go to a sporting event with your little kids next to you without hearing F-bombs raining down everywhere now. So, I mean, I think the language has developed where it's almost we're so desensitized to them that I don't even think it's actually swearing anymore. But that's where I also think it's funny that, half of that stuff will get bleeped off of TV, but you can still throw down the GD or the JC anytime you want, and they pretty much don't blink at it. But I find those to be far more damning than any of the other actual, normal swears. So,
Why do you think that is? Like, why do you? I mean, as someone who's, a good Christian, as it were, um, that it is much worse than dropping the F bomb.
well, having an unclean mouth is probably a bad thing all around, but using those, I mean, there's specific commandments not to take the Lord's name in vain.
Yeah, I suppose. I
So,
suppose that's a good
I
reason.
mean, there's not one about saying hell or damn, but there's very specific ones about taking the Lord's name in vain. So, I mean, and really, if you think about it, if you're throwing out the GD, you're kind of commanding God to damn something. I mean, that's kind of lording yourself over God
Mhm.
if you believe in God. So, just not something I do. I've got
Was
plenty
there
of
ever?
vices. Don't need to add that one.
Yeah, that's fair. Was there ever a moment that you thought, um, this is enough? Like was there ever something real that happened really that really tested your faith? Um, you know, I feel like everyone that I've like talked to about this has had a moment where they questioned whether it was the path they wanted to continue following or follow in general. Was there ever an instance like that for you?
Not not anything I can think of. I've never really had a full crisis of faith. I mean, I am not the best church attender, and the pandemic kind of really put that into. Haven't been in quite a while. I do attend virtually almost every Sunday. In fact, sometimes I check out Floral's church, Floral from Under a Rock,
Oh,
but never really had the full on crisis of faith that a lot of my friends from high school did, and a lot of them turned to atheism and became atheist or agnostics. But again, I believe that was because I got the exposure at the ages, you know, the teenage ages, to not have it be a shell shock to the system coming out of, a fully 12-year private institution type situation.
right.
And I mean, yeah, I mean, even doing the Christian panels, sometimes I feel like a complete hypocrite because of some of the vices that I've gotten, that kind of stuff. But I mean, it doesn't create a crisis of faith for me. I probably am not going to live up to Odin's standards or even Michelle's. I mean, they do things differently than I do. Um, do I believe that that makes me not saved compared to them? No. I believe that God can forgive for anything. So I'm
Well,
fine
it's gonna.
there. And hopefully I don't have a crisis of faith at any point. I mean, I think if it could have been something, it would have been if, the parents had gone early or something like that. But I've still got both parents. And both of them are, still two of my best friends. We do a lot of stuff together. So, I mean, when they go, that's going to be hard. But at the same time, I don't think it'll institute a crisis of any kind because I believe I know where they're going too.
Well, do you think? And I don't know what it means to be Michelle or Odin and how they live lives, but like, is it possible? Like, if you do believe that, like, God can say, they can forgive any sins, right?
Hmm.
Any sins can be forgiven. Isn't it possible to live a life that you want, and then but still like love within that grace of God or however it goes? Like I said, like, you have vices, you are not perfect, you acknowledge that. Like isn't it possible to still be like that? Why? I guess that's what I always thought about religion was, why do I have to live so rigidly according to God when I can, I could still love him and embrace him, and
Right.
and I essentially beg for forgiveness later. I don't know,
Well, I mean, I think the command that Christ gave to, I can't remember who it was, but, repent and sin no more. I mean, that's the command, but it's also impossible to live up to. I mean, Christ was the perfect sacrifice for a reason. He was the only one who lived a perfect life. None of us are going to. And if you're flat out living in sin, though, I mean, you're supposed to try to change. You should want to try to change. And if you have accepted Christ, you know, there's a lot of Christians that think that the Holy Spirit acts almost like your conscience.
Mm-hmm.
You'll be convicted of the things by yourself. You'll feel the shame of the
Right.
things that you should not be doing. And there's lots of things that we feel that shame, and it's still, you have to have the willpower to stop. I mean, no, everybody can come back from anything in Christianity. I mean, there was the guy next to Jesus on the cross said that he believed in Jesus, and Christ basically said, "You'll be in heaven tonight." It didn't matter
What if
what
he
he
was
had done
lying,
in his
though?
life.
What if he was lying?
What if Christ was, or what if
No, the guy next to him.
the
He's like, "Oh, dude, I believe in you," and he's like, "All right, cool."
well, I mean, and that's the thing with the question with, like, Hitler. I mean, if Hitler, you know, confessed to be a Christian on his deathbed, would he be in heaven? Technically, probably yes, if he actually means it. The thing is, you can say that you're a Christian. We've got a lot of people who say they're Christians. We've even got a lot of evangelists that say they're Christians. Are they actually Christian? Don't know. None of us will until Judgment Day.
Well, it's an interesting, like, if you take the story of Star Wars, right, and how Anakin, well, I guess forget that part of it, but Darth Vader is doing all of this bad stuff throughout his whole life, and then at the moment he needs to be, when he knows that it's done, he essentially repents and it, like, basically begs for forgiveness, and Luke offering that up to him, almost, is an interesting allegory maybe for that story. I don't know if that was intentional or if people have thought of that, but it's kind of came to me in the moment, because I mean, he lived his life, or a very large chunk of his life, being very sinful and hurting a lot of people. And then, when he needed to be, he was there for his son. I actually
But
saw an interesting story today where, like, it was alternate universe, and this guy put together a story of if Anakin had kept his mask on at the end and allowed Luke to save him, and he, like, and Luke hid him on a planet far away, and he was, he had got new prosthetics and all this stuff, and where that story might go. And all the comments were like, "Oh my God, you should be writing for Disney. This is amazing."
well, we know where that story would go if you've read Shad's book,
I have
because that's
not.
basically what happens in Shad's book. The worst person in history basically somehow becomes young again and gets to relive everything with the knowledge of what he had done before.
Wow.
But if you look at, so if you continue with your analogy with Vader, I mean, obviously he did repent based on that story, because
Right.
the Force accepted him. He turned into a Force ghost. We saw that later. So
Right.
obviously the repentance was true based on what that story was. Same thing would be what we're saying with the robber next to him on the cross,
Right.
or
Well, you make
anybody
a
who
good,
repents of their sin.
yeah, and you make a good point too. I think people's conscience will tell them if something is right or wrong in the moment, and I mean, I've certainly felt the guilt of doing something in the moment. I think we all have, and I think those who don't feel that guilt, they're pretty horrible people, and they're probably doing very, very bad things without, thinking twice. There's been many cases we've seen, or at least a lot of things I've seen online recently, of parents neglecting their children, going away on vacation, leaving their
Yeah.
newborns at home. Like, I mean, a couple cases of those, like two, but that's like two way too many. It's
Yeah.
like
I mean,
probably one of the worst things you can do.
that's the selfishness of it. I mean, I don't know how you can do that to a child, especially your own.
Right.
But I mean, it's one of those things where being a Christian isn't just about saying the words, inviting Jesus into your heart or whatever, the televangelist and, all those people try to get you to pray that one prayer. And it is an actual change in you. I mean,
Mhm.
you have to actually believe it. It's not just, I said the words, now I'm good. It's not an insurance policy.
Right. And I do, I think I don't think it's possible for humans to live in the same way that Jesus did. Like to be able to forgive anyone, like any sin to be forgiven. Like I don't think that's possible. And I don't think this, again, that's one of the reasons I guess I couldn't be such a devout Christian, is like there's a line that I set for myself, right? There's the line in the sand I think most people draw, and once people go across there, well, that's it. Now, I think being able to push that line as far as you can is helpful. Extending the olive branch as much as you can, but
Right.
Eventually you have to like be like, okay, well, I tried, and I'm not going to allow myself to get hurt or be betrayed anymore.
Right.
So,
But so couple things there. First off, nobody can live like Jesus did. I mean, the Bible tells you that over and over and over. Everyone sins. Everybody falls short. And as far as like forgiving everyone, I mean, that's kind of where the love the sinner, hate the sin thing comes in.
mm-hmm.
It does not mean that you have to continue to put yourself with that person or that situation.
Right.
It doesn't say that we all have to live in kumbaya. I mean, it's more, if somebody wrongs you, don't hold on to it. You don't have to keep dealing with that person or that situation, but
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to hold on to it, because anger and hatred just, it kind of like Star Wars, it corrupts you. And it's
Right.
not good to go to bed angry.
That's very true. It's funny. I've been working, and this is a very revealing part of the interview here, but for myself, but I've been dealing with some like just anger management stuff and trying to reel it in, because I'll get mad faster than I like. I know it's been a thing that people
Short
think I'm pretty
fuse lately.
calm. Yeah. And people are like, oh my God, you're so calm. You do all these TikTok debates. And I was like, yeah, but I don't ever see these people, so it doesn't
Right.
matter. But one of the things I realized is very useful to me is taking a step back and taking a step away from things that I know are getting out of hand. And if I do have control over the situation, to stop and then take a breath, walk outside, let the sun hit my face, or just even sit down for a minute, it's extremely helpful. And I do recommend that people do that if you don't already, because there's nothing really out there, especially with friends, family, acquaintances, that you should be like totally fired up about and ruin like a friendship or relationship over. Just take a minute to collect yourself and then go back to it, because chances are it's you who are overreacting, not the other person. So it's been a big
and it depends on what the cause is, because I said anger's bad, but I mean, Jesus had righteous anger. He went in and ran around chasing people with a whip out of the temple that were money changers in the temple where it's not supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
There is righteous anger. I mean, it depends on where the anger is coming from, I guess, is whether it's a good anger or a bad anger.
Right.
But again, the Bible doesn't say you can't be angry at something. And I wanted to go back just a little bit to what you had said about, you can't be like Jesus, and you don't think that you could forgive just everybody. But can you think of anything that your kids would do that would make you stop loving them or not forgive them?
Yeah, I mean, if one of them, unalived another in our family, that would be
in the family. Yeah, that'd be hard. But for the most part, there's not much that your kids are going to be able to do that's going to make you turn your back on them completely and say, never want to see you again.
Yeah, no.
And that's kind of the situation with God, Christ. I mean, we are his children.
Yeah.
I mean, as much as he doesn't like to see us do the things that we're not supposed to be doing, he's still going to love you and still going to forgive you for doing those things, is kind of what I'm getting at there.
Yeah.
We don't have that ability. He does.
It is true. Yeah. It's true that it would take a force of nature to get me to to not love my kids the way I do. Even something as bad as that, like you would think I
It's
feel
still
like I
hard
would
to
think,
separate them from being your kid.
right. And it would just come down to like, well, now they have nobody, everyone would have betrayed them or, that, and left them. And I wouldn't want to be the very last one. So you're not wrong. Uh,
I mean, even if your kid did something absolutely horrendous and they were put on death row, you're probably going to show up for them in that last moment. You're not going to let them leave the world by themselves, right? Even if
yeah.
it's on the other side of the glass, just being present
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean you condone what they did. It just means that you were able to forgive them enough to show up to be that person there for them right there at the end.
Oof,
right?
Yeah. It's kind of like,
Oh, I'm trying to make
right
you
there.
think.
Yeah. So you've been seems pretty devout throughout your life, which is awesome. How is your kids? How's that translated to your kids? Have they sort of followed in similar footsteps, or are they taking their own path, straying from God, or are they still in a similar situation that you were in?
They're being kids in a completely different world than I grew up in, honestly. I wish I had done better. I mean, I've got a 15-year-old and a 20-year-old, and we've talked about them on streams before, so this is nothing new. But I mean, yeah, I took them to church. I taught them, what I was taught, that kind of stuff. But I think they're growing up completely different than we ever did. I mean, the internet has soiled so many kids in so many ways. Keep them away from it as long as you can, because I mean, like, smartphones were just coming out when my kids were being born. So we were kind of that first, test phase of what happens with screen time and all that kind of stuff. And nobody really thought about it all that much when my kids were really little. I mean, this is 20 years ago, right? I mean, my oldest is 20. So, I mean, they got a lot of my conservative side. They didn't get as much of my spiritual side. And I wish that was flip-flopped. I would rather them be a raging liberal and at least have the spirituality and the peace of mind for me that they are part of my religion. And it may, to some people out there, it sounds like brainwashing if you try to convert your kids to your religion. But if you believe what Christians believe, that there's only one way to heaven, yeah, you don't want to bring somebody into the world and then kind of sideways be responsible for them going to hell. I mean, you want your kids to believe what you believe. So yeah, I would have definitely preferred they gotten this a little bit more of the spiritual side. They are not bad kids. I mean, my oldest is doing her thing right now. She, I think we talked about it last week maybe, but yeah, on Good Friday, she called and asked if we could go to lunch or dinner, and then found out that her and her boyfriend have been married since November. So we found out at the end of April that they had gotten married in November, and that I'm going to be a grandparent in August. So don't know the timing of all of those things. It's not ideal to me, but at the same time, I met my wife when I was 21 and she was 25. We dated for 6 months and we went to Vegas and got married. We told everybody we were going to Vegas to get married. I mean, so it was a little bit different. They kept it hidden, but I mean, you can't blame kids for some of the things they do. At least they got married. So,
Yeah.
she tried to do what she thought was right. And I mean, she literally tried to keep it a secret because she thought, because of my, principles, that the conservative principles and the Christian principles, that I would be furious with them. But it was like, you moved in with your boyfriend before you were married, and I didn't blow my top at that. That's where I would have blown the top, not at you getting married. That's
Right.
what you were supposed to do. So, don't know. But, well,
Yeah. So let's see. It's May, or I guess you found it in April, November. So yeah, it's either getting a little far in the pregnancy and they
Yeah.
got to do something.
we had already been noticing, and there were a few times where she was complaining that she was sick at work, and it was like, you know, you get your guesses as parents. The shocking thing was that my 15-year-old knew from like day one and kept it a secret the whole time.
Wow.
So apparently she's the one that you can tell secrets to, because she didn't she was also the one in charge of the gender reveal because she was the only one who knew the gender. Yeah, we've had a really compressed timeline in the past month. Normally you find out somebody's pregnant, then you got like 5 months, 6 months until you do a gender reveal party. We found out in April, and then we had the gender reveal party, a week and a half ago in May, or at the beginning of May, or end of April. So it's been a really compressed timeline that's kind of hard to wrap your head around, because it's happening much faster than it normally would if you had the full pregnancy to kind of get used to the idea. But
well, don't
either
leave
way,
us hanging.
it's a blessing.
Don't leave us hanging.
Yeah, I'm going to stay completely outnumbered. I've got a wife, 2 daughters, and now a granddaughter coming. So I am the only male in the house for, the last 21 years, because, me and the wife just celebrated the 21st anniversary on the 2nd. So, yeah.
What? That's wild. I'm sorry that happened. But
it's been an interesting month. But I think I've handled it pretty well in stride. I mean, there's been no blow ups. It's just like, well, it is your life at this point. I mean, I got you to 18, got you to 20 without you getting pregnant. So, I mean, sometimes when you're the father of daughters, that's all you can ask for anymore.
Yeah.
Don't get pregnant when you're 16. Don't get pregnant when you're 18. At least get out of the house a little bit before that happens. So,
well, I think, I do think that you hit on something really important, is that this is a very first generation that we're seeing any sort of data and studies on what screen time will do to kids. And the wild thing is that nobody is saying, or there seems to be no real fight, like publicly, from like politicians and like even doctors, that we should like not have screens for kids. You know what I mean?
Well, when it does get introduced, everybody calls it authoritarian.
Right. And I'm not saying that we should make it illegal for kids to have it, but like a lot of
at least get the studies out there saying this is bad for kids.
Exactly. Like a poster on the wall, like when you walk into a doctor's office, there should be like, make sure your medicine is high up off the ground. Also, don't give kids under the age of 11 social media or whatever. You know what I mean? Like,
part of kid proofing your home should be getting rid of some of the screens, right?
Right. Like, I just think.
And that's kind of where I split from some of the libertarians, including the guys in the Dix division. And I do believe that we should probably be legislating some morality. It doesn't have to be a theocracy type situation, but I think that we have gotten so far afoot from everything that, some Christian nationalism would not be a bad thing. I mean, we were founded on Christian ideals. I mean, most of the founding fathers said it. There was actually never a separation of church and state. That all comes from one letter from Jefferson.
Right.
In fact, the states had state-sponsored religion. They had state churches in the beginning. And the Constitution only says that you can't have a federal law, that makes a church of the federal government. But I mean, I don't think states need to go back to having a state-sponsored church, of course, but I don't think that having a foundation of Christian morals or ethics is a bad thing. It's kind of like, I can't remember which atheist it is over in Britain maybe it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. Absolute atheist, but said, I would much rather have a country founded on Christian ideals than anything else, because that is what has prospered, and much better than, say, the ideals that you would live under Sharia, which everybody seems to be wanting to go to for some reason, and that's more authoritarian than everything. I mean, look at all these idiots out there protesting right now. That's a protest for Sharia law.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's a lot of people in the U.S. that are in college and college age that either don't know what it is, or I don't know. It's the double standard and hypocrisy of the left. But I really do think that we should. Yeah, Chad said it's Dawkins over in
Yeah, Richard
Britain.
Dawkins. Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think it's bad to legislate some good moral values from the government.
Yeah, I mean it's a combination of things. That do I want, because there was a list that Milton Friedman had talked about, like the limited function of government should be like protecting its borders, which I think we all can agree. Um, I don't. There was like three. I don't remember the second one, but the third one was, and he said this himself, that we do a really bad job at this, is regulating how like humans treat other humans and doing it well. You know, like basically what you're
Right.
saying, like basically helping people with define their moral compass. And if that's with,
Yeah.
you know, with Christianity or whatever, I think that's fine, because I think there's a lot of good that comes out of Christianity. It doesn't have to be necessarily Christianity, but I've noticed that a lot of good people, a lot of good things come from there.
Well, most
Um,
of democracy is based on Judeo-Christian values,
yeah,
whether it's Judaism or Christianity. I mean, that's kind of the foundation of a lot of democracy. And the thing is, it does not have to turn into a theocracy in any way. It doesn't have
right.
to be tyrannical. The idea of government, the federal government especially, is the government is supposed to work for you. The
Yeah,
government isn't supposed to come down on you. The government isn't supposed to oppress you. But if the majority of people in this country, or, we're a republic, so if you pass laws that, are passed the correct way, and you have people that are actually governing you, that are working for you instead of for themselves and against you, which is what we have in the government now at basically all levels.
hmm
I mean, that's where this government is failing. They are supposed to work for us,
yeah,
not the other way around. And it's
right.
turned into, through taxation and everything else, we now work most of our lives for our government. And you can be as patriotic as you want, but I don't want 35-50% of my money going to the government, the state government, or the federal government. You know, that's not how it was ever meant to be.
Well, that's the thing though. Like the interesting part of this age, someone called it the post information age, I think it was. Um, like we have the ability to, there's so much information out there, but there's a lot of stupid people. I think
Yeah.
we can all agree on that. But we can connect with one another very easily. One of the pitfalls I've seen is that not a lot of people will go connect with, they'll talk to each other, but they won't actually have meaningful connections. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, it even it happened in my life to a large degree. I mean, part of the reason I'm on YouTube is because I am pretty extroverted. I'm a salesman. I mean, I sell insurance.
Mhm.
So if I go to a restaurant, I'm talking to 5 or 6 people, and I
Right.
probably know 3 or 4 people in the restaurant that I'm going to. Just
Right.
randomly see them at the table, go up and talk to them. Um, the pandemic really screwed a lot of people over. And me and my wife basically lost all of our friends. Everybody just stopped doing anything, and nobody ever really reconnected afterwards. I mean, there was the occasional thing, but it wasn't like every weekend barbecue like we used to.
Right.
I
Well,
needed an outlet.
right. And I think the interesting thing is, I think we were falling into, I think some people were falling into a trap of, before COVID, like I think we were on a pretty weird path, but because we were locked inside and we started finding outlets everywhere, we started a lot of people were waking up to new ideas
Hmm.
politically, you know, spiritually, whatever it is. I think a lot of people woke up in different ways. Um, but I think now we've realized, or we're starting to realize, that we have a lot of power to sort of take back our destiny. We don't have to be beholden to the man anymore. There's lots of outlet. There's lots of ways online that people can make their own living. You know, if
Yeah.
you're good enough, you practice enough, you could sit here every single day and talk to people and have conversations, and people will pay you for it.
We
They
know
want,
people who do that. Yeah.
right. And you're, I mean, you still have to pay your taxes or whatever, but you're pretty free in that you could essentially move around the country and just do whatever you want, meet people, talk to them, put episodes out, whatever it is. And that's just one little niche that we're talking about, but there's a
Mhm.
lot of remote work out of there. If you have tolerance for like mundane, like kind of crappy work, there's plenty of, remote stuff that you could do.
Yeah.
Even in your field, there's plenty of remote jobs in insurance. You could be a storm
Claim
chaser
center.
and go do, big tornado hits. Fucking, you go there for a couple of months and you're doing estimates on houses or whatever it is.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of opportunities for people out there, and I think they've never been more apparent than right now. But they still take a different kind of effort to go out and find that. I think, and this is the trick, is that people have lost that drive to push through the pain of, I'm uncomfortable, I don't like this is hard, but I want to find something because I want to be happy.
What's that fear to take the leap, right?
Yeah.
What was it? I guess it was 3 years ago. I was actually an agent for 14 years, and I decided to leave that agency that I had built up over 14 years, which was, well into the six figures, to try to start a brokerage, because I didn't want to go my whole career with one company and not at least see what else was out there.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, this economy, really screwed that up. So that failed completely after about a year. I had run through the savings, but I took the leap. I had a backup plan. I mean, my dad is also an agent. It's kind of been in the family for, quite a while. So, I mean, I run his stuff now and let him basically retire, and I've taken over his stuff. So there was a backup plan, but you've got to take the step. If you think that there's something that you can do or something better out there, sometimes you just got to take the leap of faith, like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
Yeah. We definitely live in a really interesting time. There's been many moments where there's the opportunities that exist now are huge, but with that comes kind of a lot of headache. At some point or another, you were born into whatever it is that you were doing. You were born on a farm, like that's what you did. You learned how to farm, and your dad taught you, or your grandpappy, whatever, and then you learned that, and then you needed to learn so you could feed your family one day,
or you got apprenticed out to somebody.
Right. And I think people just, I don't know. I mean, I fall victim to this too, where I don't want to work harder than I need to. We've lost the need. We've lost the need for purpose because life is so easy,
Yeah.
like,
I mean, even the poorest of us lives better than kings from the medieval times. And you're pretty fond of saying this. Is the other part of that, though, is you have to touch grass, right?
yeah.
I mean, one of the other things that comes with this online world, where it is so easy to be completely online and do, your job or everything else, is where does your interaction with actual people come from? And that's kind of what I was getting at with, all of our friends, not really reconnecting after the pandemic. I mean, I used to be the president of our Tuesday night bowling league, the men's league. I mean, every Tuesday night I was out bowling, and, that's where I would talk to people who had completely differing views than me. I mean, we would have political arguments during the bowling league. There were lots of people that, were sitting there having beers. We've got whatever is on the TV, whatever sports is on the TV, and we're talking a whole bunch of politics. And that's where, you had friends. Things like that was where you had friends on the other side. You would vehemently disagree with them on, a lot of the takes, but you could still be friends. We were all together there to bowl, which may just sound goofy, but I mean, that's the kind of things we did. And I don't see people doing near as much of that anymore, especially in the YouTube sphere. I mean, we're
Yeah.
all in the chats every night. We're all on a show every night. When are we talking to people that aren't the people echoing what we want to hear? The thing is,
Mm.
there's so many of us out here that are talking that you can always find somebody who agrees with everything you say.
That's one
But
of the
at the same
reasons.
time,
Oh, sorry.
arguing with people from the other side online
Yeah.
is not real interaction.
Right.
It's talking into the void and hoping that people are picking up your points from your side and their people are picking up their points from their side. It's not changing a lot of people's minds, on at least on the political spectrum. Sorry,
Well,
what were you saying?
this is why I want to go and perhaps be a part of Mindsfest one day, because
Yeah,
Mindsfest is great and it's not nearly celebrated enough or talked about enough. It is left and right coming together, different minds coming together to talk and debate on stage, um, and it doesn't get enough attention. I know
yeah.
that
Where else
it's
do you
live
get
streamed,
Keri Smith, Lauren Chin, and freaking Destiny in
right?
the same room? And Keri says Destiny is a perfectly nice guy and
Yeah,
is
and
completely normal to have a conversation with outside of doing his debate thing.
right,
I probably believe that about him. I can't stand his politics for the most part, but he's
right.
got places where he's right as well. I mean, on this current conflict going on in the Middle East, I think he's pretty much on the side that I would consider right.
Yeah. No, and that's the point. The point is like you need to get out and talk to people who you differ with, because eventually you're going to run across these people and need to interact with them, and you
Mm-hmm.
can't interact with people in the real world the way you do on Twitter. People on Twitter, all they headbutt every comment that they don't like, quote tweet, they're just in people's DMs, and they look stupid. First of all, like most of the interactions that happen on Twitter don't need to happen. I know it's for people are trying to dunk on others for clout and all that, and it's tiring to watch, and it's childish because it's not how you really interact with people.
Yeah.
Maybe after someone pushes your buttons enough you can, but like the conversations that I really like to watch and I like to engage in are when two intellectuals are like, here's my point, okay, I'm listening to your point, now we're responding, and then back and forth again.
Yeah.
Destiny, say what you want about him, a lot of times he will engage in good faith until he's pushed to a point that he's like, all right, ad homs are coming at me, now I'm coming back at you, like,
Yeah. He does do his research. I've
right,
watched him do his research. I've watched him since he was on Twitch. I watched him get canceled on Twitch and then
right.
come back
Mm-hmm.
because he threw down the N word. But I mean, yes, those are the people that we need to be interacting with. But
Right.
what I'm saying is we need to have more of that interaction in real life. I mean, it's
Yeah,
great to do it here, but I mean, you really have to find something that keeps you active in real life as well. And
yeah,
that's where my wife gets mad at me for this because I'm on here, 5, 6, 7 nights a week.
yeah.
We still do things on Saturdays and Sundays during the day. I work a job. So, I mean, most of my day ends up being I get up, I do work till 5. I've got 2 hours, and then I'm on a show. That doesn't leave much for real life during the week. Saturdays and Sundays, I do stuff late if I do anything on Sunday anymore. But I mean, that's part of what drives her nuts. And she's an introvert and very antisocial. So for her to be wanting to do things in real life more
Yeah.
is really where it's like, oh yeah, I should probably pay more attention to that.
Yeah. Well, oh, dude, I totally lost my train of thought there. That
Oh,
sucks.
sorry. We
No,
were
it's
on
okay.
Destiny.
No, I forget.
We were on Destiny and doing things in real life, talking to people across the aisle.
Yeah, I'm sure it'll come back to me eventually, or maybe not. I don't know. It's fine. I mean, it essentially had to just go with the touching grass thing because it's just, oh, I remember now. It was basically to say, I've said a couple times that I think the real influencing that if people actually start influencing, it will be, you'll know they are because they're not online perpetually. And
Right.
I know that sounds weird, but like if for some reason one day I am not here as much or less than I am now, it's because I'm out influencing my kids to be better humans, or
Living.
I'm out living a life IRL. And what's weird is that I love doing this, love it more than
Hmm.
anything. I love interacting. You know this. I
Yeah.
mean, I like talking to people. I would talk to someone every single day if I had the ability to. Um, None of it is worth losing my family over. Um, but I know the crux of it all too is that people support those who are on regularly, right? So
Yeah.
if suddenly I start not showing up on the days I say I'm going to show up and just kind of like whenever, you lose the support because you're living your life and influencing in real life. It's such a weird,
It's a weird
like,
balance to strike.
yeah, yeah, it
Well, and
is
it's weird
very
when you're on
strange.
other people's shows as much as like I am too,
Mhm.
because you feel like once you're on a panel, you know, well, I'm letting people down if I don't make it that night
Yeah.
because they're expecting you to be there. I mean,
Mhm.
not just people in chat are expecting to see a certain panel, but the panel, if you don't have a solid panel that shows up every week at the appointed time, it's hard to do a show consistently.
Yep.
I mean, there's lots of shows I know that it's just kind of here's the link, everybody show up who wants to show up. And if you're not setting that expectation, half the time you're getting one or two people and nobody else shows up.
Yeah.
So, yeah, YouTube's a weird place. The sphere is a weird place. It's fun. It's addictive. There is that adrenaline rush. Even after 2 years, I still don't sleep for about 2 hours after we get off a show. I don't go to bed till like 2 o'clock. And so, I mean, that's when I catch up on my shows and my movies to be able to talk about because um, as much as I was in it for the political stuff, kind of to survive in our little community, you got to stay up on the media and culture war stuff.
Right.
And I think we're seeing that start to cross over a bit more. We're seeing the politics starting to come more into this sphere because it's like we've always said, it's almost impossible to separate the two. They're hand in hand. They're downstream from each other.
Right.
And we're starting to see. I remember a time when I don't think Gary would ever have mentioned anything majorly political until he was getting out of California. And then it
Mhm.
was kind of like an avalanche of not holding back anymore, of, screw these guys, that kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Jeremy's kind of always been like that, but you're starting to see a few more people kind of show their cards a little bit more, especially going into the election year, that kind of thing. And I mean, there are lots of people that still aren't going to say anything, and that's perfectly fine because there's nothing that says that you have to be a critic and also have your politics out there on display. But it is
Mhm.
nice when some of the voices actually do say, yeah, this is kind of what I believe. And that's kind of why we've got the Christian panel too. It's a place for, Christians to go watch, but it's also a place for if you've got a channel that isn't inherently religious and you want to be able to talk about it every now and then you can come on and be a guest on our Christian panel.
Yeah.
And you can talk about something that you don't get to talk about on your channel because you may not want to broach that on your channel, that kind of thing.
Right. I think, yeah. And that's, I think people should be more comfortable in talking their politics. I think well, it shouldn't be as bifurcated as it is. I think that's really we're in a really unfortunate spot, and then the election year is only going to contribute to that,
Hmm.
unfortunately.
And the leash is going to be pulled on us
Right.
by
and
YouTube,
and I
not by
think
our
that
chats.
right, and I really want to start a show that has like a I would love to start a weekly show that is of different political values. I'd like that's our political beliefs, because that to me is far would be far more entertaining and informational. What am I saying?
Informative.
Informative than just four of us who think alike talking about it, because the back and forth on things, if you can strike a good balance on people who differ politically on stuff and actually talk effectively about election year politics and beyond, um, I think you could help influence people more and even show that it doesn't just have to be this like cutthroat eye for an eye type of deal every 4 years, or even every day. Like we're at the point now where politics has basically become like an everyday showdown in the street. Like who's got the quick draw, you know? It's really sad.
Well, and one of the highest rated shows on cable news is The Five on Fox, where you've got a libertarian, 3 conservatives, and a token lefty. And that thing's been one of the highest rated shows for over a decade now.
Yeah.
Before that, I mean, I'm going to give the examples I know. I don't know on the other channels because most of the other channels don't seem to have any actual conservative people. They have people who call themselves conservatives, but Hannity and Combs back in the day. You had Combs, who was a hardcore lefty, and you had Hannity, who was a pretty hard right conservative. And they did a show together. I mean, Hannity was obviously the star out of that because he had plenty of other things outside of that show. But those shows, they get ratings because it is not just the echo chamber. And I think that's what you want to get away from. And that's what I think we should get away from is the echo chamber. But you're also drawn to, I mean, for me, watching a Destiny stream is eye rolling most of the time. It's not how I like to spend my time watching 4 hours of Destiny. But I do it every now and then just to get Destiny's points. I'd rather go watch him because at least I know he researches and has an idea of what he thinks he's talking about, rather than, say, go over to MSNBC and watch Rachel Maddow, who I know is just feeding you crap.
Well, that's also scripted. Like all that shit's scripted now. Like she's, you know, and it anything that's off the cuff is her craziness anyway. And anyone on those networks, I mean, even be it Fox, be it MSNBC, CNN, it's all someone else wrote it. They're reading it. And I'm pretty tired of that. I think most people, you know, any rational person should be looking to independent media. And that's not to say you shouldn't still vet the information, but I think a lot of independent news outlets and journalists are way more reliable. And these are all people who spent years in, you know, in big time publications, but they split off and now they're doing their own thing. And even if they're not someone who spent years with the Times or whatever, it's worth looking into people who are taking their time to research something, interview people, and then put that out in news form, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on a Substack. You know, that to me is far more valuable, less of an agenda and more of, hey, this is what's going on.
Yeah. And you can tell who those people are. I mean, from NBC, I mean, Catherine Herridge, I mean, yeah, she's former Fox, but she was an actual journalist. She actually checked sources. She actually did the investigations. And whatever you think about them, and that's how Tucker's pretty much operated. Tucker Carlson is a pretty free-thinking guy that basically just says, well, I see this string on this sweater, and I'm going to start tugging on it and see where it goes.
Yeah.
I mean, half of his shows were not about current day, what happened today. His shows were, you know, whatever he found interesting, he would go investigate or have his team research, and then they would throw together a show and talk about it. And that's what he's doing now on his own. And I Megyn Kelly, not the far right conservative, she's pretty centrist, but I do like watching her show. She actually, you know, does her research. Steven Crowder, he gives you the sources for everything he says every day. Yeah. He may be not everybody's cup of tea. He may be way too far right for a whole bunch of people, but yeah, I mean, you get the prime sources from him if you go to his actual website. Yeah. So, I mean, it's those people that you've got to, you know, that's who you kind of got to listen to, as well as trying to get a little bit of the other opinion or other side of it as well, because it's almost always somewhere in the middle.
Yeah. No, I mean, I hope people, the problem is it's not a problem. I guess it is a problem. The problem is that normies, if we're going to use that word, are stuck. They're stuck in the real world, in that they still look to the news as their that's that, we're going to sit down for the evening news. It's true because it's on the news. I've gotten it there
Yep.
for 25 years or longer. They're not plugged in. They don't understand what alternative news is. And alternative news to them is a lie, or it's some guy in his basement that never leaves and he's lying and he's making up his own stuff. So
Yeah.
it's we're in a very interesting time where there's lots of information out there, but there's a lot of dumb people. There's a lot of people who aren't very well read, who aren't seeing the information.
Low information voters.
Right. And then even having sources available, like when was the last time you dug through sources of an article or whatever? A lot of times you're just trusting. I'm like, oh, there's 1,000 sources listed here. That's awesome that I can go look at them, but I'll take him at his word. Not many people are digging through the sources, even though I think they should. I mean, most people aren't reading past a headline.
Yeah, and most people don't understand. If you were never really taught, it's reading primary sources is not the easiest thing to do.
Right.
And a works cited page, yeah, it's great. It tells you where everything's coming from, but being able to read the primary source and understand it in the context is also a skill that you have to develop or at least practice to kind of really understand what most of those prime sources are telling you.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it's one of those, it really is one of those things where there are, like you said, there are way too many low information voters. And, personally, here's a hot take. I don't think anybody who doesn't pay taxes should be allowed to vote. I don't think voting's a right. I think we got that wrong because we originally started with it not as a right. It was property owners and it was other criteria. And then we gave everybody the right to vote. And if you're not invested enough to learn what you're voting on, I'd rather you not vote. And I think those who actually pay taxes are the only ones with the skin in the game who should be allowed to determine how that money is getting allocated everywhere, because people will vote for Santa Claus at every chance they get.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that sentiment. I mean, if your money is going, if you're not paying into the economy, first of all, and again, if you're not a property owner, you're not a part of the local economy yourself, then what business do you have? What power should you have over?
See, I thought that originally I had to change it because property owner doesn't fit in today's world. That's why I went to taxpayer, because if you're paying taxes, your skin's in the game. The thing with property ownership is they can price you out of property ownership. I mean, look at the economy right now. The mortgage rates are so high that, how does a 20-year-old go get a mortgage for a $500,000 house that cost $100,000 20 years ago?
Yeah.
They've priced people out of being able to do that. That's why there are so many renters, and that's why condos and apartments are being put up everywhere, and single family dwellings are not as much anymore. So I had to change my thinking on that, because it's not fair if the government can actually price you out of being able to vote either.
Yeah.
So that's where the paying the taxes is where. That's where my line is at this point. Yeah. That's where I think it should be.
Yeah, and I think that's fair. That makes sense. But I was more speaking to like this makes sense too, as a hypothetical of like, owning property, or if you have a job in there and you're paying taxes, then that's when you should start having a say in local affairs, not before that. And if you're just, as we're seeing now, we're starting to see floods of immigrants coming through our southern border. Like, do I want people to be here in the United States? Absolutely. I would love for them to benefit and contribute in a positive way to our economy.
And I would love for them not to start out by breaking the law to do it.
Right. And that's again, these are topics that it's very difficult to have a rational conversation with people. Like, this used to be like something you can just say, hey, I don't agree with this. People go, yeah, I agree. I see what you're saying, but like, and you could have a respectful back and forth. And then 2016, just like, it's like
TDS is real.
Yeah. Everyone got clubbed over the head, and they're fighting some mental illness now.
Well, that's what happens when the Uniparty didn't get its way. Right. Because everybody said it was Hillary's turn. and it didn't work out that way. They weren't fortifying that. Um, so that when we can all see the uniparty working at all times, right? I mean, it's pretty much a given now that they're making deals under the table. Everybody in Congress gets rich doing a job that pays a modest salary for what they do. They were never supposed to be there year round. They should all have to show us everything that they invest in at all times, or not be allowed to invest in the market while you're in the government. There's so many things that just point to it's all rigged against we the people at this point. That's where it needs to flip back to the government works for us, not the other way around.
Have you noticed like gambling in general is something, and I don't know if it's a uniquely American thing or what, but there's like gambling crap everywhere. I was at the gym today just working out, and I look up on the TV, and like at the end of like one of the basketball highlight shows or whatever, it was like a picture of Charles Barkley, and it was an ad for gambling. Like,
yeah, all the major sports have allowed gambling now. I mean, you go from Pete Rose can't be in the Hall of Fame as one of the best players of baseball ever because he gambled as a manager, not even on his team, but because he made bets, right? To now we're basically sponsoring every single game by a online betting company.
right.
And it is just another way to separate you from your money. I mean, just like the lottery is a way to separate you from your money. And the lottery is just essentially a gigantic tax. It's just a pooled tax.
Right.
One person may get some money out of it, but then they're going to get 50% of that taken away in tax on top of what it is already taxed.
Right.
But gambling is the same thing. And in the US, this is where, and so this is where the moral compass of the country, I think, is just kind of gone wrong. I mean, it used to be Vegas was about Vegas and Atlantic City. You could go gamble. You could do some riverboat gambling. You could do it for fun. And usually it was you're going to, visit some place as a tourist to go do it for a couple days. And now they've got it ingrained within all of our major sports. And major sports are still the big business in the US. I mean, that's what drives most TV. That's what most people do in their downtime. They watch some form of sport. I personally watch hockey and gave up every other sport. And I used to watch, like, me and my dad, we would we'd do church Sunday morning. We'd immediately go to this bar in town, and we would sit there from kickoff of game one until the end of the final game on Sunday. We would watch all day long, just hanging out, having a good time, watching sports. I used to watch baseball. I used to watch golf. I would still watch golf. It hasn't been invaded by the woke near as much as the other sports, but the woke has even destroyed our sports. Hockey and golf are pretty much my last bastions, and hockey still has some situations, but at least they've basically said, yeah, we're just getting rid of all nights. We're not going to have any themed nights anymore because, the 0.05% of people watching hockey that are throwing a fit about pride tape on sticks and everything, hockey just handled it by saying, no, we're just not doing anything. We'll get rid of military night. We'll get rid of every night. We're just not going to play the game anymore. And that's fine with me because sports aren't a place for political messages. They're a place where we were supposed to escape, just like our movies were the place where we were supposed to escape. Sure, you could have an absolutely political movie, but now we've got every movie has a political bent. That's where our problem is with this whole culture war thing is it's not just a movie about JFK anymore. It's let's have political talking points and, Disney movies, Guardians of the Galaxy, Star Wars, everything has to be political.
Right. Well, what do you think about the theory that sports are just distractions to keep people like humdrumming along and not paying attention to the greater evils that are happening in the world?
I think that's fine. We need a distraction every now and then. whether your distraction is sports, whether it's church, whatever, we need some distraction. But I mean, having a distraction is to rest your mind. The rest of the time, you need to be hyper focused on what's going on around you. I
No,
mean,
I'm
you have your
saying that
work.
it's
Yeah, you're saying like the whole globalist thing, you know, we're keep your eyes over here
yeah,
because we're doing this over here.
yeah, sleight of
Yeah,
hand
and I
type
get
shit.
that. What I'm saying is you still sometimes need distractions. You can't go your whole life just laser focused on, what are the globalists doing today? I mean, that ruins everybody's lives too. We've got to start finding a balance. But when our distractions become engulfed in that thing that we're not wanting to focus on when we want a distraction, that's where it's become an issue, and that's where everybody's standing up and shouting about it because there are no distractions left. I mean,
But
what do we really have?
but do you think that professional sports right now in present day 2024 are being used as that distraction? Like if I
Mm,
can put on my tinfoil hat, do you think that there is a globalist cabal that's using professional sports to distract people from real events because things are really being set in motion now, more than ever?
I think probably because I think it's always been that way. I think
Mhm.
the Colosseum in Rome was used, to placate the masses. Here's what our government's doing. Here, we're sending everybody off to war to defend the empire or to expand the empire, but we're going to give you some entertainment too. I mean, it would not be a surprise to me at all how much probably sports is actually rigged. And I believe that quite a few sports are probably rigged to a degree. I believe, certain teams are pushed forward and others are held back. I believe even based on where you're at in the country, your team is probably going to, have some extra difficulties compared to parts of the other country or other parts of the country. So yeah, I believe there's some politicalness to it, and I believe it is a distraction away from what's happening, and it's to wag the dog situation, right? It's
Yeah.
Bill Clinton getting indicted and dropping a few bombs over here. Look at these bombs. But the sports are a far more innocent distraction than those. But yeah, throughout history, sport has been used, as a distraction, whether it's by the government or whether it's truly just for something else to do to get away from how miserable your life can be. I mean, back in the day, life wasn't that pretty. We've got it easy, right? But sport back then was that was the distraction from how miserable your life is. I think it's just changed what sport distracts you from, right?
Yeah. Do you think that people are going to, you know, do you are you hopeful of people finding purpose moving forward in the future? Do you think that maybe even this election year will help wake people up to, like, or are we a couple election cycles away from realizing our purpose and how we need to maybe separate ourselves from politics and occasionally and get back to just, I think, appreciating one another a little bit more rather than just butting heads all the time?
I think I think we've got a very hard road, and I think this election could be possibly the end of it all. We'll see.
Mhm.
I don't see an outcome in this election that works for anybody.
Yeah.
If Trump gets elected, the left goes nuts. If Biden gets elected and it's by another, ridiculous margin, nobody's going to accept it again. So, what outcome in this election actually works for this country?
What does
Um,
what about RFK? What do you? I mean, people have said he should run as a conservative or a libertarian or independent, but like, what if he ran as a Democrat and then just ran the country as a conservative Democrat?
I don't think the Dems are going to vote for him. I mean,
You know?
I think they've made their choice, and I think he's going to take more away from Biden than he will from Trump, because there is never a chance of him running as a conservative or a Republican. RFK has a few conservative ideas, especially regarding the things that happened during 2019 and 2020 that were forced on us.
Mhm.
But outside of that, that dude is still a Kennedy through and through. I
Right.
mean, if you listen to him, there's nothing, and that's kind of a weird thing to say because at the same time, JFK would have been a Republican at this point. I mean,
Yeah.
there's nothing in that party that aligns with what JFK actually believed at this
Mhm.
point.
Yeah.
But I mean, Kennedy is closer to being a centrist. He's not conservative in any way except for basically on the vaccine takes.
Right.
Outside of that, he's still pretty hard left. Um, what I am hopeful about is, I mean, you can see it right now. You can see the patriotism that's happening on some of the college campuses from white young men. Generation Z's boys seem to be trending conservative, and I don't know if that's part of the whole red pill movement, the manosphere, all that kind of crap getting involved with it. But as the young men of the nation go, so will the nation go because those are the future leaders, right? Um, the girls, if they ever want to be married, if they get past this whole feminism thing, I mean, they're going to have to deal with the guys that are available. And if they're all right leaning conservative or go in that direction, then you're going to have some turnaround in the country. Um, I think what's well, I mean, the red pill movement has kind of gotten involved with the conservative side of things,
Yeah.
but I still think it's an overall not great movement for the company as a whole or the country as a whole, right?
Yeah.
The red pill movement has some strange ideas in there that I mean, I don't know if that's what's driving some of these young guys to be this way or if it's just truly patriotism. I mean, watching them raise flags up against, you know, these protests and stuff, that's been great to see. And we've seen the numbers saying that they're trending to the right. But will the government already be too far gone by the time those kids are there? The the thing that is driving me nuts about this country is we're still letting the freaking boomers run everything. That generation refused to let go of the power when they should have. Gen X and even into the millennials should be in charge of this country at this point. The boomers refuse to really relinquish power, and the boomers don't understand anything going on in this country.
Yeah.
If Gen X had gotten their turn at wielding the power, who knows what the country might look like right now? Because we were raised a completely different way. I mean, you're slightly younger than I am, so you're solidly in that millennial, right? But I'm pretty much on the verge of Gen X, right there at the mix between Gen X and the millennials. We were raised different.
Yeah.
We did do the running around the street doing sandlot baseball stuff. We didn't have the internet. I didn't have a phone until I was in, I think, college. That was the first time I had a phone that was anything more than a Nokia stick phone that,
Yeah. It's like a cell phone,
like
you
you could
mean,
play
right?
a game. Yeah.
Yep.
Um, the internet, we didn't have our first PC in the house until I was in like 7th or 8th grade. I mean, we grew up separate from it. We are of both. So if Generation X had been given some chance to control some levers of the government and then take their turn and pass it on to the millennials, that's the way it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to have 80, 90-year olds running everything for everybody. They don't know what's going on half the time themselves. So I think that's where this has gone wrong is the boomers have stayed way past their welcome. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm not saying they needed to die off or anything. What I'm saying is they needed to recognize when they started hitting their 70s, that's the end of when you're supposed to be holding the power in the country, and they would not relinquish it on their own.
It would have been great to. It would be great to get someone in the presidency that was like in their mid 50s. That'd be, or even
Yeah,
younger, like late 40s. That'd be fantastic. I think rather than these old fucks because
yep.
it's getting scary, man. You know, even Trump's up there in age at this point. He's way more lucid than Biden, but he's still old. You know,
He's
he's
only
not
two
young.
years younger than Biden, I think.
Yeah. Um, So it's scary to watch because I mean, in many areas of the country, there's people representing, there's people in Washington representing uh, their constituents, and they don't even have a finger on the pulse. They have no idea what their people want.
Yeah, prior
And
to
they're
her
all
death, Dianne Feinstein was still sitting in Congress, or was she Senate? She was Senate, I believe.
Senate. Yeah.
At what, 93, completely unable to control her own bodily functions and had no idea what was going on. They would tell her, she would start trying to argue during voting, and they would just tell her, no, it's just vote yes.
Yep.
That's what her staff would tell her.
Yeah.
And it's like, yep, that's who we need pulling the levers of power right now. People like Dianne Feinstein, people
Well,
like,
even,
yeah,
well, even when our our press secretary is, obviously running Biden's Twitter account. Like, I know that seems like very minute and little, but
Mhm.
like, I'm sorry, but that, like, past presidents, I know Trump is really the first one to really engage with that platform, but at least it's him. When I mean, you're just pulling the veil back here and letting us see, like, okay, that's not, they're pretending to be Biden, but it's not him. And they've done it more than once. It wasn't like a
Yeah.
one-off thing, like, oops, he was sick that day, so we had her tweet. No, she has control over that account. She's the one doing it. Like, this is pretty brutal,
Yeah.
Like,
When did the president start needing a PR spin person for their social media?
yeah,
Well, when social media was created. I mean, Obama was really the first one that was kind of involved in the internet being a thing for trying to be elected, right? And
yeah,
that's who really his ground roots came from, you know, getting everybody involved throughout all different platforms, not just
mhm,
door knocking. Um, and Obama was a complete unknown when he was running for president. I mean, there were those on the right who did actually do look into it, did some looking into him. I mean, when you launch your campaign in Bill Ayers' living room, there's a problem already. The
yeah,
rules for radicals, Bill Ayers, Weather Underground, a part of groups that actually did bomb the Capitol, far worse than a January 6th, supposed insurrection,
yeah.
which was just a inflated riot. Um, yeah, we there are you can always find the information that you need to understand the people that you might be voting for. Um, but yeah, they need to there should be nobody who's allowed to speak on behalf of the president on representing themselves as the president on social media. I understand, like, Karine Jean-Pierre, I mean, that's the whole point of the press secretary talking to the press. But if you're going to be supposedly talking directly to the people, that better be the person, not some PR representative.
Right. Just say that from your account. You don't need to
Mm-hmm.
pretend to be Biden. You're already doing the job. Just
Right.
just do it from your account, because we know you're saying it on behalf of the president. Let him use his own account. And the point I was trying to make essentially is, like, if that's coming, if they're doing that there, where else is it all happening? Like, it has to, if they're using if there's someone else is controlling the president's Twitter account, what are the other things that are happening down the line? Because you're talking about the highest office, and
Yeah.
say what you want about it. King in the chat said, well, he's just a mouthpiece. Well, sure, but it's still the most powerful position in modern politics right now.
Yep.
And
Leader of the free world.
yeah. But like, what is happening down the chain? And that's where, someone like myself is, who looks at this stuff quite a bit, is just worried at what they're seeing. You have, we talked about earlier, you have people protesting at Ivy League schools and schools all around the country right now, and they don't even know what they're protesting. I was listening to the Joe Rogan Experience the other day with the trigonometry guys, and towards the end they played a clip of
the two
of
girls
them.
in New York.
Yeah, they didn't even know. They just picked up a sign. Someone gave them a sign. Like, this is what we're, and this is the problem. This is the problem that I have, is, like, I don't care if you're fighting for something, but at least know what you're fighting for. And also, it's okay to stand up for something. One of the things that Francis said on that was, like, I don't agree with the war in Palestine, like, but I'm not going to debate anyone on it. Like I have my opinions based on what I have read, but I'm not so dug in that I want to like go toe to toe with someone. And
Right.
that's okay. And people don't realize that that is like, you don't have to be at those protests to have an opinion on it. You could just say, I don't really know. And that's perfectly good. And then you just move on because the only people you're helping are the ones that are trying to plant you there to pretend to be something.
Which is where
And
you got to follow the money.
yeah.
And my money is on, you follow that money, you get to George Soros. People like him.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these protesters are the same protesters that were out there with BLM.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just the same crowd all over again. And if you really look at it, I mean, this is going to start to sound conspiracy theory crap, but I don't care. If you really look at it, what did the BLM protest really come down to? And what are these protests going to come down to? It's going to come down at the end to, it's an election year, white people bad.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the end game for all of these groups protesting. I mean, you can even see it in these, pro-Palestinian protest already. You've had how many instances of, well, you're white, we don't need your voice, that kind of thing. The one instance of somebody supposedly making monkey sounds at the one protest, and that guy's doxxed immediately and kicked out of his frat. What are these people doing the rest of the time? They're going completely nuts. They're destroying the whole campus. They're taking over buildings. It's Chad all over again, or Chaz, whatever the freaking Seattle thing was. But one white guy misbehaved just a little bit. You can't even really prove that he's making monkey noises. It just looks like it. Who knows? I mean, nobody knows. It's 2 seconds of a clip. And that guy's life is destroyed. But all of these protesters, not a problem.
His life isn't destroyed. And here's why. Because he got kicked out of his frat. This is why I would be willing to bet he's controlled opposition too. He's not, everyone's going to forget about this fucking idiot in about 3 days. We'll say 3 weeks. No one's going to remember him next month. You know what I mean? Like, he's not going to have that. It's not like it's attached to his resume or anything. Like, but it's like you said, now it's all of a sudden white man bad because they saw one white kid supposedly making a gorilla noise in someone who was black that was talking.
Meanwhile, right? I watched a leftist chase Larry Elder through California in a gorilla suit.
Yeah, he's the wrong type of black, Brahma.
Exactly.
Get with it.
I mean, that's where that's the whole thing right now. I think what's going on, again, a little bit more conspiracy theory stuff, is Trump scares the crap out of him because Trump isn't part of the Uniparty. I mean, the Uniparty has controlled most of our presidents for pretty much our whole lives right now. Trump was the first one that came from outside of truly being a politician. He was a businessman that stepped into it not expecting to actually get there, and then showed that he didn't have any clue what he was doing when he got there. But that's what made him a good president, because he didn't have the allegiances to everything. I mean, the Uniparty pushed back against him at all points. As much as, it was the Democrats, it was just as many Republicans. I mean, it was all the Democrats, and it was how many never Trumper Republicans. I mean, that's your Uniparty right there. Yeah. And that's what scares them to death about Trump. That's why he is so much worse for the government than any other person that's run for president in our lifetimes. And I mean, I know that starts to sound D-Day Cobra-ish, but at the same time, I think it's true. I mean, I think we need more businessmen stepping into politics and stepping out of their businesses for 4 years or 8 years to go do something in politics, a lot more than we need lifetime politicians.
Yeah, we need people who...
We need problem solvers. We need people who know what it is to run a company, because you run the country like you run a company. And what do people do who run companies? They hire people and put them in positions to where they can give them the right information to make the right decision.
Nothing like that, unfortunately, will happen until the election process is changed, in my opinion, because right now it's like your career in politics is your campaigning. And then when you've built enough of a resume and popularity there, then everyone, the Uniparty essentially lifts you up, and they're like, okay, this is the guy. This is our guy right here. Vote for him. Vote for him.
Yep.
And Trump broke that because he was already a celebrity. You know what I mean? So you would need to find some.
He had the name recognition,
right? And that wants to. It was the stars aligned for him because everyone knew his style, and people knew that they were done with modern politics. Even coming off of Obama, people were not happy necessarily, towards the end of his second term, or even, with his first term. There was a lot of stuff that people didn't like, even within his own party. And people, I think, were fed up with politics in general. And we're like, okay, this guy's here now. And Clinton, Hillary, I don't know.
Right.
But you know what I mean? So we were at a really big tipping point at that point, and it just so happened to go Trump's way. And as you said, I don't even think he realized that he was like,
no, there was no way he ever actually dreamed it was going to happen.
Right.
And you could tell by the people, he wasn't ready. He did not have people that he could actually trust advising him. And then by the fourth year, it was all crap because, China releases, will not do that to your channel. But, sorry, getting candid. But, you have that situation. And then, the greatest economy that we've had for decades and decades sinks straight to the bottom. And then you have the Uniparty come right back in, and now they're trying to tell you that everything's going great right now. There is no real inflation. Crime's down, even though we're only getting reporting from 20% of the precincts in the country. We don't even report what's happening in New York or LA or Chicago. We just changed the rules to where you don't have to report. So we can say that crime is down. We can say that more jobs have been created than any other president in history, even though it's just bringing back the jobs that we all shut down, a few years ago. Mm-hmm. And then on top of that, the other jobs that are being created are because inflation is so bad that people have to work 2 jobs where they only had to work 1 before.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all BS. But really, the scarier thing, Shags, is when you look at it and you realize that the fact isn't our elections are the problem or the politicians are the problem. It's the bureaucracy that's the problem. Because even if you were to put term limits on congressmen and senators, they're not actually doing anything anyway. The lobbyists are the ones who actually write the bills, and the bureaucracy is the ones who basically are running the show because they're unelected people just in the background. When you get to Congress, you get a team of people that are assigned to you. They may not even be of your same party. They're just people who have been working in Congress forever, and they know the ins and outs of how Congress works. So they're to guide you. But really, it's not to guide you. It's you're supposed to be working on getting reelected and fundraising, and they're going to take care of what actually goes on. You show up and give the nominal vote, but it's the bureaucracy that runs it. If you had term limits and you kicked people out, it's not going to change anything because the bureaucracy is still there to make sure that Washington runs the way Washington runs. That's what Trump meant by the swamp. And that's what's going to be impossible to unentrench because that's firing half of the government.
Well, and here's the other thing I think that needs to change. And King said it before I could say it, but the omnibus bills that come out and signed into law, they're like 9,000 pages long. That needs to stop. There's zero reason that any of those should be that length. It should be something that could be easily looked over and discussed within a single session of Congress. I mean,
at an 8th grade reading level.
Right. Like there's no reason that they should be cramming in, aid for other countries in our budget bills or anything like that. That's a totally separate issue. Yes, you are essentially using our taxpayer dollars, but you vote on that separately from other things. It does not go into the same thing. Like, I don't care if, and that's the thing is like, sorry, but you're going to be working every single day. Like everyone else in this country, you're going to show up at 7 a.m. You're going to sit there and you're going to discuss your bills that you wrote, vote on them, blah, blah, blah. And then you can punch out at 5. when you're done working. None of this, skating out early or whatever, meetings for 4 hours, drinking martinis. Sit there and do your job that you were elected to do, and not doing 3,000 page omnibus bills. It's insane that they put up
and
with
let
that
your
and allow
record
that.
show whether you should be reelected. You shouldn't be running a campaign the whole time that you are supposedly doing your job. You
Mhm.
should be doing your job.
Yeah. It's nuts, man.
It is.
What's happened to politics, and maybe it's been a long time coming. But since I've really been paying attention to it more and more, it seems despicable that anyone let it get beyond where it is. And when you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and the crew, like, you would think that they, of all people, being the young ones they are, even though they're Democrats, they would come up with these things on their own. Like, hey, we don't need to do all this stuff. Let's make this a little bit easier and more digestible, and let's make government work for the people. But they don't. They're a part of the same shit system that, you know what I mean? And it's really despicable is probably the best word for it. And yeah, I don't think that it requires, I understand you need caveats for things, but again, limited government, I think, is the answer that most people want. I think most people, most Americans want as little government in their life as possible. I think if they're given examples of what that means, they understand, like, what, I'm not saying we need to dissolve the government. Everyone does say, like, oh, limited government, that means you don't want them around. Like, no. Like I said, I would go back to Milton Friedman's list. He's like, 3 things on his list. I wish I could memorize them. I'm sorry, guys. But
I'm sure somebody in chat knows them.
Yeah, but that's what it is. And it's Milton Friedman's is a very, very famous economist. Like he understands what it like how that this country needs to be run like a business to some extent. And we don't need these politicians, breathing down our necks every single time we walk out of our house.
Well, there was never supposed to be a ruling class.
Right.
It was never supposed to be a job. John Adams worked his farm, then would go up to Philadelphia, to discuss whatever was going on. And then he would go back to his farm, right? It wasn't your everyday job. It was never supposed to be. And really, the difference between politicians now and I think politicians then, I don't know enough about them, but I mean, you look at George Washington, he was willing to let go of the power. That's what made him a great person in history. He could have become a monarch. He didn't. These people will not let go of the power now. I mean, it's become their whole lives. It's become whole dynasties, generations of Kennedys, Bushes, Clintons, all of these things. I mean, and they're so interbred now, it's ridiculous too.
Right.
If you look at whose kids are with whose kids and whose grandchildren are with whose grandchildren, it's all interbreeding. All the politicians up in Washington, it's ridiculous.
Yep.
It is creating dynasties. And that's where I go back to the original point. Your government should work for you. But I don't think we need to wipe out the full government, but I do think that it's gotten so big, wipe out the Department of Education, wipe out most of the 3-letter agencies, just get rid of them right away. And if what I think a good president would do is get in there, do that, wipe out most of those departments that are unneeded and were never supposed to be the job of the federal government. The federal government was to raise the army and to protect the borders. That's what the federal government is there for. The states were supposed to do everything else. So get rid of all these agencies, right? And then abdicate that power back to Congress, because the president has taken too many powers. Congress has relinquished too much power. The whole idea of executive orders is the president taking power from the Congress, and they let it happen because they can't act the same way a president does in their minds, because you would actually have to talk people into doing things. Whereas if your party gets the presidency, you can just have the president say, all right, we're doing it this way now. That's not what the president's job is.
Yeah. I did find Milton Friedman's Three Functions of Government, which I'll share with everyone because now I can actually say, and I did get the two right. And then the last one, people may or may not like, but knowing Friedman, it does make sense. So the first one was military defense. The government should provide the military defense of the nation. This includes protecting the country from external threats and maintaining a strong national defense. Again,
Right.
strong borders totally makes sense. Like, I don't know why anyone would disagree with that.
You're not a country if you don't have a border.
Right. Law and order. The government should enforce contracts between individuals and protect property rights. This includes maintaining law and order and punishing those who break the law and providing a framework for resolving disputes. So this is an interesting one because I think like that we do all this stuff already, but we've expanded these things so far out that we've forgotten what we're actually doing. But I think this one kind of lumped in what you were talking about, Brahma, about understanding like morality and those boundaries. Now law and order is a little bit different, but I do think that, like, to your point, government should be doing that, adopting the Christian theocracy or whatever, like whatever we could do. I don't want it to be,
an ethical code that we all want to try to live under. It doesn't have to be a religious code, but there should be certain things that we can agree on are good for a society and bad for a society. Right. There was a time just 20, 30 years ago where we said porn is pretty bad for society. You have to at least cover the magazines if you're going to put them in your store.
Right.
Now you got the internet and people are throwing a fit because you might actually have to, type in your birth date to prove that you're old enough.
Yeah.
It's gotten to the point where they think anything that blocks me from doing anything I want to do is bad.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not good for a society. I mean, yeah, there should be some guardrails for society, right? I mean, it's not just a free for all. If I feel like I should be able to do it, I should be able to do it.
Right.
Because a society of people can't function that way, especially a society as big, or a country as big as the United States.
Yeah.
That's why states were important. States were the smaller version of the government that took care of different societies within a smaller area.
Yep.
And then cities, down lower. But the federal government was just supposed to make sure that the states, stayed together.
Yep. The last function of government that Friedman said was public goods. So the government should provide public goods and services that are not provided by the private sector. These can include things like infrastructure, education, and healthcare. So this is the one I think that people could, it could range what people agree on. I think the Department of Education has been a massive failure. Mm-hmm. I think public healthcare has been a massive failure in a lot of ways. I do think there's a way that it could be done. And then infrastructure, like, I think it's important, obviously. Infrastructure.
The interstates are good.
Right. Very good.
Yeah. There are things that are good. On public healthcare, we've gotten so far. I mean, we still call health insurance, but in what way is it insurance anymore? It's basically a human warranty, because you can go without insurance, get cancer, and because of the pre-existing conditions, you can still go in and get insurance. That's not what insurance is.
Right.
I come from insurance. Insurance is for sudden and accidental things. It could be long-term stuff, but the whole point is you're supposed to have the insurance before the accident happens. You can't go get into a car accident and then buy a car insurance policy and say, okay, you guys take care of this. That's not what insurance is.
Right.
We've created a human warranty. And the closer you get to that, the further you get from actual privatized anything. And even though we're not fully socialized on it, we're getting there, because that was the ultimate goal of Obamacare anyway. Mm-hmm. But the solution was really pretty simple. All we had to do before you threw in Obamacare was just open up competition across state lines amongst the insurers. Yeah. Get the pool bigger, make it, that would have brought the affordability, because you'd then have competition.
Yeah.
And then, the insurance companies, they're still making their money. They're still paying their claims. and they're probably paying their claims better because they have to compete with other insurance companies. Instead, we had everything locked within states. You could only get these policies within these states, and a company had to operate completely separate in a different state. All you had to do was open it up to free commerce, and it would have been huge for this country to have multiple options for your health insurance.
I
Instead,
agree.
we went government controlled.
Yep. Well,
I
they
mean,
can't keep their power if they don't do that. You
right.
open up the free market, they have no control. Um, but yeah, dude, this was a fucking killer conversation. We went
Good.
ways that I didn't expect or like fully intend.
I
Um,
rarely get to voice my political ideals without being, you know, like,
Talked over.
well, talked over and having a whole bunch of libertarians on me, that kind of thing. Or,
Yeah.
I enjoy doing the shows with libertarians and stuff, but I don't fully agree with a good chunk of their ideology. So yeah, I actually enjoyed this. Me and Little Chad have actually been talking about trying to do something more political because it is an election year, and we would like to get our voices out there more and not just, you know, us being able to talk the way we want to talk about the politics rather than it. And neither of us is monetized, so we don't have to give a crap about what YouTube thinks.
Right.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I enjoyed
Um,
this.
no, dude, I appreciate you taking the time and stepping away from your normal show. Um, it's been fun. Like I said, I like talking to my friends as much as I like talking to the big personalities out there. And you have been, if not nothing, if not a friend, I think, and for a lot of the people I've met, and it was great meeting you out in Vegas. Uh, it's I'm blessed for sure.
Me too.
Keep
I
saying,
mean, you're one of the few people that has my cell phone in the YouTube space, and I've got yours, and we talk a little bit outside of the whole YouTube thing, and we talk about things that are outside of just what we talk about on YouTube. So yeah, I mean, I think if we had met in any other circumstances, we would have been just as much friends as we have through meeting through YouTube.
yeah,
Our we gel very well, I think.
absolutely. Well, tell people what do you got coming up? I'm sure you're going to be on a bunch of panel shows. What's coming up this week for you that people can catch?
Yeah, so tomorrow we've got the on my channel. I'm actually doing a few things there now. We do the party animal stream where I've got 5 or 6 or 7 people. Sometimes we play party animals and just have fun through the evening. We're starting to mix in some other party games just to, not get way too bored with party animals. Wednesday, every other week we've got the Christian panel with Keri Smith's channel. Then Yelling at Park Cars on Wednesday night at Comics Division. Thursday night, Throwdown on Comics Division's channel. Friday, I do a Sin and Art with Slender Dad and Little Chad, and usually Mad shows up there. Saturday, I do my one main show, Bourbon and Boarding, and it is playoff hockey time right now. So we're entering into round 2, and actually, I do that show with that 70s rock fan, and our teams are playing each other in the second round, Dallas versus Colorado. So we may even do a couple watch-alongs if our show alignments work with that and what nights the games happen and when. So watch for those because that should be interesting. Him whining about Colorado beating the crap out of Dallas, but hopefully that ages well. And then Sunday sometimes I do stuff with Culture or Tom, and Monday back on Monday Night Meltdown. So yeah, I stay busy, and every now and then I show up on the Wednesday midweek hump. Depends on what's going on anymore. I think we're getting a little bit more of the after show back, right? We're working on something.
Yeah, yeah. As people know, I had my own little health scare, so I had to reel back the show length for Wednesday night. But I think our newer format is going to allow the after show to come back. So like you and Mephisto can join again, and we'll send the links out to others who want to join. I just know it was a destination that people liked before, and not doing it, I think, was sort of hindering what was going on. And it, you know, for no other reason, going to Rumble, and then now our new channel that's exclusive to the midweek hump. Since we're not monetized on there yet, we could be a little bit more open and silly on there. on those channels for the after show and be a little more candid for the most part. So,
and I just like showing up because I like hanging out with you guys. I like sheep. I like horror. I like you. And I mean, typically Green Rocks is already gone by the time I'm there, but
true.
I did enjoy that on Wednesday nights. And if you continue to send the link, I'll continue to come and hang out when I can.
Yeah. And guys, as for me, as you know, we have our Wednesday night show. This week we have Hypnotic coming on. So if you guys are a fan of the stuff that he does, he's been really busy on his YouTube channel. He has flown by 40,000 subs on his channel. So he's going to be joining us after he finishes up his show on Wednesday night, starting at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. I have a really awesome interview coming a week from Thursday. I'm not going to say who it is yet. I'll let the suspense cook a little bit, but it's someone that, people will, kind of maybe turn their head at. But I don't care because that's why I'm here, to do what I do. And then, so tomorrow night, I'll probably do another episode of Shagcast and just hang out with you guys and talk some shit about internet stuff and get my grift on because that's what I like to do. But I appreciate everyone who stopped by and chat tonight. Those who lurked, I saw. Who do we have? We had King Deplorables, Diana Francisco. Great to see you, Mr. Dro. Good to see you as well. I know Lil Chad was there.
It's Courtney's Fellowship of Oddballs, Nuclear.
We
Sonia.
had W. DeMar was in chat for a second there. Sonia stopped by. Keto Simple. Metastep was here for a bit. Emperor Doomsday. If I missed you, I apologize. Nuclear was here too. Good to see you, Nuclear. Yep. And I think that's about it.
Real quick, Diana Francisco, I'll be saying some prayers for your mom's situation. So
yes. And those who have listened on alternative platforms, we really appreciate you. It's a great show to have. I hope you're enjoying the discussions. We're over here on YouTube and Rumble. If you ever want to come over and watch us live on Monday, Thursday nights, usually starting at 8:30 p.m. Mountain Time. That's it for us tonight. Really appreciate you guys. But we'll see you guys tomorrow night right here on this channel. Toodles.
Cheers.